I have finished all the essential work on the transit beta. Everything that I had planned, I finished.
That's good. Including the unplanned renaming of absolutely everything in the game.
Yes, exactly. That very thing. That turned out to be a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and I'm much more pleased with the results I have now than the ones I did have. Basically, a little thing clicked in my head and said, hey, wait a minute. I was told a thing once about how this was supposed to work, and these clearly don't work the way that was supposed to work. And then I went, oh, I can fix that. It's easy. I just have to ask myself a question before I write every move name.
And that is?
What is grammatically correct to complete the sentence, I see you're attempting to... And then there you go.
So basically, you are you're naming your moves in the same way that Clippy operated in Microsoft Word.
Exactly. Yes.
And everybody loved Clippy, so.
Yeah, Clippy would have been a brilliant Apocalypse World storyteller thing, MC, whatever they're called.
MC.
You can tell I understand the system really well.
So I'm afraid that, have you played or run anything Apocalypse World?
Yes.
Okay.
The first Gen Con I went to, which was 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because we went last year, I skipped a year, and I went the year before that. Okay, yeah. 3 years ago, I signed up because I wanted to see what it was like. I signed up for a Dungeon World thing, which turned out to be a disaster, and was only really the Apocalypse World system because it was at a table with the words Dungeon World on it. If you remember, I think I've told you this before, but the thing became this: answer these random riddles on this piece of paper. We have 36 of them, and that'll kill 2.5-3 hours.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that story.
Yeah, it was not brilliant, and I was really disappointed with that experience.
Well, it's not really. I can say honestly, it's not indicative of the Dungeon World experience at all.
No,
not really. The core game really downplays the whole 3 pages of logic puzzles aspect of it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I've noticed that. So in the intervening time, I have managed to play a early alpha of Transit a couple of times, and that was okay. We had the basic framework of the system in, so that was easily understandable. And I'm confident now I could only screw it up 2 or 3 times before I got it right if I had to run it myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good.
But I did also take a survey of various Apocalypse World based systems.
Right. Of which there are many.
There are many. This is true. There is no denying that. I have supported a few Kickstarters in order to get what I want, and I have purchased directly from. I think I got most of these off a drive-through RPG. But I've got Apocalypse World 2.0.
Okay.
Which is, I think, the most recent updated version of Apocalypse World. I've got Dungeon World. I've got Spirit of 77. I've got Fellowship. I've got, Masks, A New Generation. And I got City of Mist, which is the most recent one to come in that's based on, or powered, I guess they call it powered by the Apocalypse,
right.
Which is another thing I can clearly demonstrate my knowledge of the system about. So what I've done is I've read through them and stolen liberally for things that I need, and basically just learned from them how they are meant to work. Because I'll tell you, Apocalypse World itself and Dungeon World, if we're being honest about these things, and even like Fellowship, they don't really explain themselves very well.
No, they really don't.
They explain themselves slightly better than Fate does, because at least I kind of knew what they were getting at in Apocalypse World stuff. But yeah, it's a little rough, and I'm hoping we have somehow managed to overcome that in Transit and provided a much better explanation of how things are intended to work.
Well, it's actually a really common thing in the role-playing game industry that everybody basically is just selling games to gamers.
Right.
And the assumption is that those gamers will then turn around and convert non-gamers to gamers, so the books do not have to teach a non-gamer the game. They just don't have to explain anything.
Right.
And the only one who tries is Dungeons and Dragons. And I guess to a lesser extent, Pathfinder does try. And they do it pretty badly. Though I shouldn't say that, because Fantasy Flight Games, their Star Wars beginner boxes are actually really well put together.
Right.
They do suffer from the handicap of being Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars. But
yeah.
But one of the things I really like about the starter adventures in those sets is that they are actually built with a tutorial progression in them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, okay.
Was I supposed to disagree there?
No, I was actually surprised by well, no, it's fine. It's great radio. I say, I make an observation, you say, yes, that's correct. And then we don't elaborate.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you say something wrong, I'll let you know. No, but they are actually really well put together and very instructive in how their system works. And they do the nice thing where they don't just lump you in and say, okay, all these people are going to a castle in the swamps, and this is what this guy does, and this is what this guy does, and this is what this guy does, and he says this, and he looks for that, and he rolls these, and that and now you know how to play. No, that doesn't work. These are very much more, okay, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's how we're going to accomplish it. These are the things you need to know to make that happen.
And more importantly, that the game concepts involved in their encounter progression scales up. So, the game doesn't start with a combat.
No.
It starts with pretty much the simplest check anyone could make.
Right.
Which I still think, and I'm thinking back, because I did the Rebels one, whatever the heck,
right,
with that beginner set, and I have run the I have gotten this question a few times because of, people keep commenting on our rivalry over Star Wars. Right. Yes, I have both played and run the Star Wars game. I am not just criticizing it because, blind. I have run it numerous times.
Done it. He's at least done it once.
No, I have done it numerous times. And yes, I am good at it. That doesn't mean I like it. But both, and what was the first one? The Edge of the Empire.
Edge of the Empire, yes.
Yeah. So I did those beginners boxes. And both of them, I can't remember the adventures in them too well.
Right.
But it's like they do ratchet up from, okay, you're trying to open a door. And the only thing the players can, it's a very simple situation where the players can propose a couple of solutions, like hacking the door. I guess that's a thing, or
right,
or forcing the door or whatever. I can't. I really can't remember the encounter. But
that's fine.
It's a very constrained and limited encounter where the actions sort of just suggest themselves, so that the only thing the GM really has to worry about is showing them how to roll the dice so that they can see, you're going to say what you do, and then we're going to roll these dice, and then I'm going to look at all these arcane symbols and tell you what happened. Don't worry about how.
Well, to be fair, it is don't worry about how right now.
Exactly. I'm not critiquing that. I'm saying that's actually a strength of it. How will come about later. Because it does gradually build in those other concepts. I think I'm pretty sure that they were careful to make sure that those first encounters don't even involve any of the boost or unboost dice, the white and black ones.
Yeah,
it's really just characteristic dice and a difficulty die or whatever.
Yeah, they're very good about that. The other nice thing about it is the player packets aren't just character sheets. There's all kinds of information there that they need to know in order to be effective with doing things. Like they actually do explain the dice symbols and how they cancel each other and all that kind of stuff. They do a very short, very brief version of it that is just enough for the player to go, okay, I can pick up some dice and then I can roll them and then we'll figure out how the outcome works, from that point on.
Yeah. They are well done. And it's something that, like, you look at the beginner's boxes for D&D. But you know what? If I can go off on a tangent here.
No, we never do that.
Okay. Then never mind. I have a fundamental problem with beginner's boxes. Okay? If your game is so complicated that in order to teach people how to play it, you need to strip out half the game and put it in a smaller box, your game is designed wrong. The whole concept of them coming out with the core rule books, I speak specifically about D&D here, and then stripping it down and coming out with a starter set or a beginner's box seems really, really screwed up to me, which is not the word I was going to use. It seems to me that when you sit there and design your game, maybe you should design it so that it fits in a box.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
You look at how much stuff is in first of all, in the current 5th edition rule set, you can strip out 9/10 of what is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Right? It's completely unnecessary. Okay? On top of that, you could cut the player's handbook in half and still present it better. Okay, there's a lot of fluff in there too.
Yeah.
And then, if your modules included stat blocks for your monsters, you also don't need the monster manual. Right? It's a supplement you could buy later.
True.
But if the modules were complete games in and of themselves, then they would encompass all of the stuff in both the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual. So then you would publish a monster manual and I don't know if I want to talk about this because I've thought long and hard about this. If I were writing a role-playing game,
which you're not,
how would I publish it? What books would there be? What could people buy?
Right.
And without going into any, what I would consider to be corporate secrets here, because I don't want to get scooped, there's a couple of different markets at the game table, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks of gaming as one market. There is a gaming consumer.
No, that is an error.
It is.
There's at least 2 different games being played at every RPG table.
Right. And then there's actually, there's actually what I would say 4 different markets. If I really wanted to get into it.
Okay.
But I know a lot of players who just get by on borrowing a player's handbook. Right? I know many tables that have 1 or 2 copies of the player's handbook for all the players. Right? Because that's a $50 expense.
It is. It absolutely is. In fact, we had some feedback from somebody, I cannot remember the name right now, who disclosed that for the last, I think he said 5 or 6 years, he has been playing Pathfinder and has never bought any of their books, not even the core rule book, because it's all been available online in the OSR stuff and whatnot. And he finally did buy one just recently out of guilt.
Well, honestly, I'm going to take a really unpopular stance here and say you shouldn't feel guilty about that. Pathfinder made that choice.
Yeah.
But it was a calculated choice because they know most people won't do that.
Right.
But what I wonder is, because, first of all, players don't learn the rules of the game.
Not really.
Very few players sit down and learn the rules without playing the game and read the player's handbook cover to cover to learn the rules. The person who's learning the rules and picking the game is the dungeon master.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even if it's that first game, right? When you're a kid and it's like, oh, I just got this game. Well, and I'm going to get 3 of my friends to play. Guess what? You're the dungeon master. So the idea of a player's handbook, which contains the rules, is sort of ludicrous. Imagine if a player could buy a $20 softback book that just had the character generation stuff in it. Like it was just the library of classes, races, spells, and equipment. Right? I bet a lot more players would buy that just for the convenience of being able to create characters and level up at home. Certainly more than would buy a $50 player's handbook that they don't look at most of. So then you shave off the character generation from the rules of the game. You write the rules of the game to the GM, and then you create these little player packets for character creation. But there's also 2 different types of GMs out there. There's GMs who just want to run published modules and published campaigns and stuff. And there's GMs who want to create their own stuff. And as it stands right now, both of those GMs are required to buy, for example, the Monster Manual. Because, those giant $40 hardcover books that have those modules in them do not have monster stats. They only reference the Monster Manual. But the GMs don't want to buy that if they're not going to create their own games. And for the GMs who are going to create their own games, instead of just having a monster manual, wouldn't it be nice to have a manual that included monsters, traps, magic items, and rules for creating traps and magic items and rule, sort of like a DM's toolkit, the sort of equivalent of the character generation book for GMs.
A toolkit that was an actual toolkit, you mean?
Yeah, it's literally a set of tools for building your own adventures with instructions on how to use them to build your own adventures.
Well, that's going to make the DM's guide kind of thin, isn't it?
What DM's guide? So now you have a GM, you have a table, they buy one rule book. That's the rules of the game, and the GM owns it. Mm-hmm. Then the players may share or buy the character generation book. But again, it's thin, it's low price point to encourage them to play. And the GM, meanwhile, decides whether he wants to buy modules, in which case he buys modules, or he buys the toolkit that lets him make his own games. And the 4th market, by the way, is the whale.
The guy who will buy everything regardless.
Yep, anything that has the name on it. So, but you don't have to sell specifically to those people. Those are people you don't consider a market. Yeah. Unless, of course, you make video games, in which case you call them your market. But yeah, that would be my starting point for how to publish a role-playing game. And I'm saying that's a starting point, because from there, you still have to figure out how to package all this stuff up and get it to someone. But again, I don't want to go into too much detail because I have given this a lot of thought, and I have to have some surprises up my sleeves for the game I'm not writing.
Right.
And here's the sad thing. I honestly think marketed properly and sold properly, you could be extremely successful in the role-playing game space by doing nothing more than making your own D20 ripoff. If you knew how to sell it better than Paizo and Wizards of the Coast do.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And honestly,
many people have tried.
Uh-huh. But like when they're not Paizo and they're not Wizards of the Coast, they end up selling to gamers. Because Paizo and Wizards of the Coast draw the gamers into the market. You know, that's D&D is the entry point into the industry. And I think they're really bad at being the entry point into the industry. I think someone needs to take that title away.
But who? And under what circumstances?
I don't know.
A mystery to solve. No, we've pretty much done away with, you know how every RPG starts with the how to RPG, you know, what is an RPG kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've done away with that.
Well, I hope so. Because quite frankly, that, I mean, like, you explain. So here's how the game is played.
Mm-hmm.
The players are presented with a situation by the game master. Yeah, obviously you say it more than one sentence like that, but
right.
Players will be presented a situation by the game master. They'll think about their characters, they'll think about their situation, they'll decide what their characters want to do. And they'll relay that to the game master. The game master will then determine the outcome using the rules as necessary and relay that outcome. Continue forever. Mm-hmm. And now you're playing a role-playing game.
Yeah, exactly.
But
this is how it goes. This is what you do.
Once you explain that, you don't have to explain the rest. You don't have to explain the concept. Well, you are your character. Well, no kidding. Because you basically just said that. And there's no way to win. Well, that's a lie, actually, isn't it? Because there's a goal in the adventure. And that's what I'm trying to do. You know? Yeah. And there is a way to lose. And all that other stuff, like, I love the chapter on, you know, there's no way to win, but let me explain to you the point of playing. And it's like, you know, I have never opened up a board game instruction manual and had it try to explain to me why games are fun and why people play games. It's like, before you sit down to play Monopoly, let me explain to you why you play games. You know, games have been played since time immemorial. But, you know, it's like, yeah, no kidding. Here's the thing. Just tell people how to do it. They'll figure out whether it's fun or not. You know, and you don't have to explain the whys behind the process. Just say, this is what you're going to be doing when you play the game. And then people will say, hey, that sounds kind of fun. And they'll do it. Or they'll say, this doesn't sound like it's for me. And then they won't try it. And then they'll miss out. You know, or they'll try it and they decide, you know what, this really isn't for me because it's not for everybody.
Well, see, that's one of the things I've always kind of wondered about in RPGs. I mean, I understand they're trying to, you know, people who've never played an RPG before and bring them up to speed and right. Okay, whatever. Fine. When okay, so actually I buy board games this way as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just something about being experienced in RPGs and whatnot, because I got 300 or something board games here, right? Every last one of them I've bought because the concept of the game itself was interesting, not because, you know, it wanted to explain how to board game at me.
Well, yeah, and you know, it's really funny because, like, the concept of RPGs now isn't as unique as it used to be.
Mm-mm.
You know, the idea of persistent gameplay, of a story that persists from game to game. Well, that's now in your Risk Legacies and your Pandemic Legacies and stuff. And in every online role-playing game you've ever played, for that matter.
Correct.
You know? And in fact, if you've played any video game ever, you're already familiar with the concept of being a character. You know, like, you control this character. This character is you. You know, so it's like, once upon a time, those were really wacky ideas. You know?
Yeah, when they first came out, yes. Yeah. Now, not so much. So not when you can look at, you know, somebody sitting on Twitch playing RPGs and somebody on YouTube playing RPGs, and you probably know at least one library group or something like that if you're lucky, you know, that kind of stuff. It's not.
But even if you don't have that experience, like you've never watched someone play an RPG, if you pick up a properly written RPG,
Mm-hmm.
and I say properly written,
Right.
I can't point at any examples right now because they don't exist. They used to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hell, the Mensa Redbox. I had zero experience with RPGs. I was 10 years old. Zero experience with RPGs beyond choose your own adventures. Right? Picked up the Mensa Redbox and I was running my own games. It told me how to do everything. It even told me how to make my first dungeon. And it did it in a really smart way, actually. The way that the Mensa Redbox taught you how to so like the Mensa Redbox it's the player's handbook, because it was broken into a player's handbook and a dungeon master's guide, unfortunately. But the player's handbook it started with a choose your own adventure sort of setup, except that it explained the mechanics of the game as you were choosing your own adventure. So it'd be like, oh, now you do this. So you want to pick up this die and roll it. And, right now, like you would get into a fight and it would be like, the goblin will keep missing you. But you just keep rolling attack rolls till it's dead. Because you got to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it also presented a story of you going after this evil magic user. And it even taught you how to map. Because it gave you a blank piece of graph paper. And every time you went to a new passage, it would say, okay, the room looks like this. And there'd be a picture of that, a picture of the map of that room. And it'd be like, add it to your map. And then at the end, it would say, hey, compare your map to the real map. So that's how it taught the player. And it left the player with this villain, this evil magic user, Bargle, who had done terrible things and then gotten away. So conceivably, all of the players are now on the same page as to they want to go kill this Bargle guy. So then you open the DM's guide and it says, so you want to be a DM, eh? Well, we'll teach you how to run your first game. And it's, it very few rules before the adventure. And then you get to the adventure in the book and it says, okay, gather your friends and start reading here at passage 1. And, all the directions were built in. And it's a little dungeon. It's a little keep. And the idea is that the players have come there to find Bargle and get their revenge. And they explore the whole first floor of the keep, and Bargle's not in there, and then you get to the stairs that go down, and, the instructions to the GM are like, oops, I guess Bargle wasn't up here. But good job. Send your friends home, and ask them to come back next week. And meanwhile, here's the map of the underground level of the dungeon. But, gosh darn it, we didn't fill it with all the monsters. Here's some monsters you might want to put in and some traps and stuff, but make a key and put the stuff in. And then when you're done, have your friends come back. It's, oh, okay. And then, they run through the whole thing and then it says, okay, Bargle still wasn't down here. Gosh darn it. And then the instructions to the GM are like, send your friends home. And now, you know what? We didn't even draw a map. We're sorry. So what you're going to have to do now, based on everything you've done, is that third level, draw a map. Here's Bargle, put him in. And now you have learned how to run a dungeon, populate a dungeon, and build a dungeon. And it's a great progression from player through to GM. All run through this with a single plot thread to unite it all. It was a brilliant way to teach people how to play games, run games, and then design their own games. Nothing has ever come close to that.
See, that's kind of been the tricky part with Transit is I want to get people in and doing something related to the game early.
Right.
The problem is there's a lot of necessary groundwork that has to be laid first.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps pushing that little bit of game further and further back. Like I don't even want character creation to be a thing until after they've done like the first little really interesting thing in the game.
Yeah, right?
Leading
with character generation is leading with paperwork and math homework.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way to sell your game. I mean, character generation empowered by the apocalypse is not that onerous, but still.
No. Actually, I've just had an idea.
I actually just had an idea too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to write that down, and you're all just going to have to wait to see what happens with it.
I will communicate my idea to you later in case you want to use that.
Okay.
Though knowing us, they might be very similar. We have to start hanging out with other people.
Yeah. Look, it's time for us to see other people, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not you. It's everybody.
It's not you. It's me. I don't like you. So it's me.
And so the show ended. That's actually a very interesting idea, and I may have another chapter to add to my continually growing. At this point, I'm just doing busy work throughout the manuscript. This section's not alphabetized. Let's alphabetize. Renamed all the moves, re-alphabetized all the moves, made sure all the the handouts and everything were where they were supposed to be, and that I had the right handouts, and interpreted a Chinese puzzle into something in English so that I could then explain it to players and the people running the game, and so it all made sense. In fact, it occurs to me I have to rewrite some of the mapping stuff, or actually I have to actually write some of the mapping stuff, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, it's out for proofreading right now. And when it gets back from proofreading, it will go for a rules check. And then it will go out to beta people who are interested in playing Mr. Beta of the Transit RPG and finding out what it is we've been talking about for the last 3-4 weeks, whatever it is.
See, and this is why I won't even talk about what I'm working on until it's ready, because
right.
Except, of course, I talk constantly about that role-playing game I'm not writing.
Right. Well, I mean, you're not writing it, so it's not a big deal. It's
Right.
not like it's ever going to happen or anything like that.
At this rate, people probably don't think it's ever going to happen. Well, to be fair, to do a full, like a full major RPG, on a similar scale to, Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars and Pathfinder and stuff, takes a couple of years, it turns out.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I have discovered that.
It's not the sort of thing you just slap together.
Right. I made the announcement, though, the other day on Twitter. This thing is either ready for beta by the 30th of April or it dies.
I saw that.
Because I am 5 years into this thing.
That's, you know what, though? That's a good announcement to make. It's giving yourself an ultimatum, but also making it a public ultimatum.
Yep.
So that hopefully, if people care, they will ride you on it.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, it's April 30th or nothing. Whatever happens on April 30th, I have to be done with this part of it, one way or the other, because it's now holding up other things I'm interested in doing as well.
Yeah. Well, you have it's not like it has to be like printed and done, right? It's, you have a specific doneness in mind for what it has to be on April 30th, right?
Yeah, we have to be ready for the beta on April 30th.
Okay.
Basically, I want to turn around and, April, and then May 1st go, okay, now who wants beta?
Oh, I'm like, oh, you got 3 days.
Yeah, no.
I forgot what month it was. So I at this point, what are we? Yes, we're going to be 2 weeks out. So it's been like 4 weeks since, but I did the major update on my website, which I'm very proud of the result.
Yes, it's a beautiful result.
But the first 2 weeks of it was spent in basically the Dunning-Kruger tar pit. Well, where, like, okay, so I'm not as it turns out, a web designer.
You're not?
No, I'm an accountant. Actually, I'm not even that. I'm an accountant who thinks he's going to be a game designer.
Right.
Right now, I'm basically a blogger. So that's really what I am.
I'm making my living blogging at last.
But from the very beginning, when I started the Angry GM site, I was teaching myself the behind-the-scenes coding. So even though it does run on a WordPress back end, I have gone in and tinkered a great deal. You know, I bought a theme and the rights to modify that theme for my personal use. You know, so it's not just like, you know, you go and you browse and you say, oh, I'll just make my website look like this and be done with it. And I have been gradually modifying the underlying presentation of my website for years. And that has necessitated me to gradually teach myself, well, obviously, you know, everybody started with HTML and then what was PHP and cascading style sheets because everything is in CSS now. And then I had to start learning how to play with my SQL server. I am told that the correct pronunciation of SQL is SQL.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so I had to learn how to actually play with my SQL servers. Most recently, I have been using regular expressions to do big search and replaces of multiple posts to correct broken links and things.
You realize everything you say I have to link to, right?
Yeah. You don't have to link to regular expressions. You know? But yeah, and I didn't even know they were a thing. I thought a regular expression was like, you know, like
good morning. How are you?
In time saves 9 or something. Yeah, that's fine. but yeah. So, but the problem was every time I sit down to do anything with my website, I know just enough to assume it will be easy to figure out the parts I don't know.
Oh, good. I love that.
Right? And that's it. I'm in the Dunning-Kruger hell now. So I'm like, I'm going to redo my whole website, you know, and I started with just a very simple goal of just organizing my posts into series and presenting that. And then discovered that there's a plugin that sort of does what I want, but I had to tweak its code too. And so gradually as I'm doing it, the project is expanding in scope, and I'm also discovering I don't know enough to do it. So I had originally allotted myself like 8 hours. Like, redo entire website, 8 hours.
That's wrong. That's not a realistic goal.
But what killed me in the end is after 2.5 weeks of basically doing the equivalent of pushing paper around and not knowing where to start. Because that's what you do when you don't actually know what you're doing. You just start tinkering with things. It's like, well, maybe I'll do this part. And then you tinker with it, and then it doesn't work. And then you're like, okay, I clearly have to look that up. Maybe I'll do this part. And then you tinker with it, and that doesn't work. And you have to do this part. And then you tinker with this, and you accidentally delete all of your content. And it's like, well, I'm glad I backed up my entire database. Now I have to learn how to restore that. So finally, in the end, I sat down, and I guess I could say this on the show too. I now have a proofreader, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
I have a proofreader and assistant web designer.
Where you found this one, I'm not sure. She's clearly not one of us.
No, she is. She is very different.
She plays Fate.
Oh my God, we were having a conversation today or yesterday about different games. And we are she's talking about like she likes Fate and Burning Wheel, and she's trying to sell me on this other system.
Oh, good Lord.
And everything she's describing about this system, I'm trying to politely not say that all sounds ghastly. This is the sort of system I would never want to play.
This is exactly the worst thing you could think of.
We are so opposite in our tastes. But she actually approached me a year ago.
Yeah.
And offered her help.
Mm.
And see, now I'm very nervous because I have not actually spoken to her. It's all been text. So her name, I'm going to mispronounce it now. I'm sure.
Oh, this will be fun for me.
It's I think it's either Hasse or Hasse. Hasse.
It's not Hass.
No.
Oh.
She is Dutch? Yes.
Oh, you are so going to get yourself in trouble now.
I don't. She knows all about me. She knows not to expect anything from me. I can't be bothered. But yeah, she apparently has been a follower of mine for some time, and she approached me about a year ago, and because I had put forth a post about the struggles that were going on a year ago, because I'm always struggling with something.
Yeah.
So, and she offered her help, and I said, look, I can't take someone's help without paying them.
Right.
Okay, it's because, especially now that I have a Patreon and I am earning money from doing this, to let someone work as a volunteer for me is just fundamentally wrong. You get paid for your work. That's what I've always believed, which is why for a long time I did not have an editor, because editors are not cheap.
No, we're not.
No, you're not. But we went back and forth and we negotiated and she came on to help, and she has been a tremendous help, even though she and I literally do not see eye to eye on anything regarding role-playing gaming.
Why? Okay, so this is the fundamental question, right? Why then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Why then is she a fan of yours?
Because my stuff is good.
Oh, that's what it is. How silly of me not to realize that almost immediately.
Well, no, I mean, this does happen a lot, where, I get people who will read my stuff and they'll be like, well, you know what? This guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but he only plays Dungeons and Dragons. So, and nobody knows, like, I spend half my time analyzing mechanics and the other half of my time talking about narrative structure like I'm an English professor.
Right.
And I give them equal importance. And so if you're not interested in hacking the game rules, wait a week, and I'm going to tell you about the importance of, themes and tone in your role-playing game. And so that means I'm talking to a very broad base of role-playing gamers. And that's part of what attracted her, even though she plays those, the hippy-dippy sunshine and rainbows and bunny farts narrative games. A lot of what I say about pacing, structure, and also a lot about the psychology of how players and game masters interact, it spoke to her.
Well, good.
And then I have people, I'm going to tell this story. I shouldn't tell this story. This is probably a terrible story to tell, but what the hell? I lost a patron.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Did you check behind the couch?
No. Did you read my recent article about bear cavalry?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What was the ultimate conclusion about bear cavalry in that article?
Well, the concept of bear cavalry is stupid. Okay. But I was using that to make a larger point. And, I just, the 2,500 word analysis of why dwarven bear cavalry is stupid because of dwarf, bear, and cavalry. None of those three words work together like that. Right? And I went through the whole thing about domesticating bears and how bears behave and why dwarves wouldn't need cavalry and all this other stuff, right? And I was literally doing it because I was drawing people into thinking that this was going to be just an argument about why the idea was stupid. And then, like, a third of or 2/3 of the way through the art. No, it's like halfway through the article. I swerve and talk about how to evaluate what ideas you want or don't want in your game. And specifically the concept of making ideas opt into your game instead of taking the whole player's handbook and just opting out the stuff you don't want. Being more deliberate in what's in your game for any reason you want. And I admit that I may have burned a lot of word count on being funny first, but I figure I can get away with it at this point, and then, so anyway, I lost a patron, which is, you lose patrons, no big deal, but I got an exit survey.
Right.
And this particular patron,
those are always the best,
identified the Bear Cavalry article as the reason why he could no longer follow me, or she, because I demonstrated myself to be an elitist, gatekeeping, elitist gatekeeping person with no imagination.
So they read half the article.
They might have read the whole article. And yet still it was like, no, I can't follow this person because he dared to analyze a fantasy idea in a way that, it's like, no, that's a stupid idea.
How
what
dare you think about the game and what you're doing in it?
Right? It's like, so, I do keep I shouldn't admit this either, but what the hell again? I do keep a list of exit surveys that I have found particularly delightful.
Oh.
Well, there are some, like...
Now, don't share too many.
You know what
those.
I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I have a Patreon. I know how it works.
Right. Right. And it's stuff like that. It's stuff where the person, completely missed the point. And then felt like I was dictating to them what they had to do with their game. And that's always the viewpoint that baffles me. Because at the end of the day, we're all just, everybody on the internet, we're all just giving out advice.
Right.
Right? And nobody is forcing, like, I'm not going into anybody's game and taking away their books and saying you run it this way or you don't run it any way at all. Right? I'm just daring to suggest that there's this way might work. And people get so worked up when you give out advice that they don't follow. It's like, oh, that's wrong. Well, who cares? Like, I'm just an idiot on the internet. That's not usually the word I use when I say that. You are too. We're just idiots on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Who cares what our opinions are? Why does it bother you? But something else has happened that I've noticed lately that has really started to make me sad.
What's it?
For people, not sad for myself.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay. You ever have like a game reviewer or a movie critic that you really liked, and then one day he comes out and he likes a movie or a game that, and writes a glowing review of it, but you hated it? Or alternatively, he writes a terrible review of how awful something is that you liked?
You mean he has a wrong opinion?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then, so now you have agreed with him 49 times and disagreed with him once.
Clearly, he is a trash fire.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, okay, we disagreed on this one. You can still read his, especially a good reviewer explains their thought process.
Right.
So that even if you don't agree with them, you still get something out of it. It's like, well, no, now I just have to burn the bridge. So I can never listen to this person again.
Yeah.
It's like, I love those. You see it on the internet all the time. I was a fan of you for so many years, and then you said this one thing, and now never again. I hate you forever. Okay, yeah, that's kind of irrational, you know. And it's happening more and more frequently now. Where like, unless you are perfectly in agreement with everything, it's like you can't follow that person anymore.
Now that I have a project I'm working on, I find I'm spending a lot less time on the internet per se, and more in nooks and crannies of it that are slightly more civil.
Yeah, I'm gonna freak people out when I say this. I'm strongly considering just getting off Twitter.
I'm freaked out.
It doesn't do anything for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how much traffic it gets me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I can safely just be like, I don't need Twitter anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just galling now. Social media in general is terrible because it's not social.
Well, you sure don't want to be on Facebook.
No. Well. I love how people are freaking out. You're talking about the privacy issue.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I love how people are freaking out about this like it's new.
Yeah.
Like we've known that for years.
It's just the news again. That's all. It's not new news.
That's why it's free.
Uh-huh.
As soon as you're being given a service that would cost millions of dollars to provide for free, you really should wonder how you're paying for it, because you're paying for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the other,
you are Facebook's product.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't tell what a website is selling, what it's selling is you.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like the people with the YouTube ads, right? Where everybody's like, oh, YouTube doesn't take care of its creators, and the whole advertising, like if you put up content that advertisers don't want to advertise on, they're going to take your ads away, and now it's terrible. And it's like, this is the exact same thing that network TV went through. Okay, in fact, this is what invented cable TV. Was the minute you're taking money from an advertiser, and you rely on that money to survive, well, that advertiser now has a creative say in what you're doing. If only because if they don't want to advertise anymore, you have to choose between changing your content or eating.
Mm.
And I mean, but that's the nature of the beast. The moment you're getting money, like, nobody ever got suspicious. Like, YouTube content creators never got suspicious of the fact that someone was giving them money just to post videos that no one was paying to watch. And never thought, like, well, what's the product here? Why are advertisers paying? Because, congratulations, YouTube, you as a creator are not YouTube's customer. You are YouTube's product. And your fan base is YouTube's product. They are selling you to advertisers. And just like in the store, if you are the banana that is, unripe and covered with bruises and not looking good, you ain't going to get sold. You're going to be the puppy in the orphanage that doesn't get adopted. And the thing is, though, you don't have to opt into being sold, because you can be on YouTube for free and produce content and put it out there, and YouTube doesn't care, But if you want money for it, well, then you're in a business transaction now, And eventually, what happened was, network TV. There was stuff. They wanted to push the envelope and do things that you couldn't do on network TV because, soap companies wouldn't pay to have their ads run on it. And the idea was, well, what if we have people pay directly for the content so that your customer is the person who's consuming your content? And that's how you got cable television. That's what HBO is. What if you pay directly to the content creator for the content you like? which, by the way, is what YouTube creators are doing now. They discover, Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can get money. Or what is it? YouTube Red, the YouTube subscription service. Now I know that there are other issues with YouTube, and please don't tell me about them because I'm skirting them carefully. But you should always be suspicious when you are getting something for free or when someone's giving you money for nothing. You should be wondering what's for sale.
Yeah.
Because nobody gives out stuff for free.
Nope. If there's money somewhere, somebody has to make that money. And in order to make that money, you have to have some sort of product or service.
Right. Nobody's going to put money into something that doesn't have value for them. Well, seriously, if people, it would be nice to tell people, if you want to hear us address your issue, what issues should you bring us?
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we know what we don't do. We don't provide specific advice on somebody's specific game.
Right.
Okay. So the corollary to that is that if you have a question that is of general interest and can help improve a number of people's games or can explain something that a number of people are interested in, that's pretty likely to get on the show.
Mm-hmm.
If you provide a piece of information to us that we did not know, that will probably get on the show. Not that we don't appreciate all the comments that aren't one of those two things. We always like to hear what you think about something. It's just that those two things tend to be things that we're directly interested in presenting, not only to ourselves, but to you guys out there. If you manage to present something to us or ask a question of us in a way that one or the other of us doesn't quite understand all the words in, that might be something that gets on the show just to see if one of us can explain it to the other of us. Or if you can, as a listener, can subsequently come in and explain what you're talking about or what somebody's talking about. That will probably find its way onto the show. And these are kind of in order of priority, by the way. Beyond that, it's got to be really, really good in terms of, if you can hit all three of those things, then you're rocking it and you are probably definitely on the show. But again, I want to stress that all of the input we get and all the comments we get and the emails and that kind of stuff, it's all appreciated. It's all read. Yes. I read all of it. So I am aware, of who's saying what and what they're talking about.
And I am not as diligent, but I do read the comments on the website.
Cool.
I don't see the email because I'm not allowed to have the password.
No, you're not. That's right.
That Nigerian prince really needed my help.
That's correct.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And you were very unfair.
I know.
I have experience helping people.
Okay,
Remember Vampire Thomas?
This is true. Now somebody's going to want you to explain Vampire Thomas. Oh, well, we can fill a show with that. That's kind of it for the, we don't, I certainly read people who give me feedback and want to express a different opinion or a different point of view. And occasionally if that's really maybe something we didn't consider or wasn't like assumed knowledge within that, whatever it was we were talking about, that might make it onto the show. Mm-hmm. But by and large, if you write in to tell me, you guys were talking about this and it reminded me of this thing here and blah, blah, this is what I think about that thing. That's great. I'm interested in what that is and how you connected all that up and why you thought that was interesting, but I don't know that that's going to be of general interest on the show itself if we bring it in, but you never know. Sometimes I pick a weird one.
So speaking of all that.
Yes. Here we go. Claire wrote into the website on episode 26, Trail Locator 2.0.
Do you know, by the way, I did not get the title of that.
You didn't? A lot of people didn't do that. It was like Pottlebat all over again. It's like, what is this?
I think it finally hit me yesterday.
Uh-huh. It's like, I don't understand what's going on here. What happened? Why aren't I getting that title?
I know, and you did a tweet when you were I think when you were trying to build buzz for it. And you said our episode next week is called Trail Locator 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
If you can guess what it is, you win a prize or something like that. Guess what it's about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, I can't guess. I should be a shoo-in. I was there.
Yeah. You would think.
I don't get it.
Anyway, Claire wrote into the website. She says, from what I've heard of the Pathfinder 2.0 rules, see, Trail Locator, Pathfinder, Trail Locator, Pathfinder.
Yes, I get it now.
It seems like they're simplifying the things that Pathfinder 1.0 did well, moving to a more 5th edition style combat system, while the rules that they're adding are kind of unnecessary. My first thought when I read about the different modes was from the people who brought you library hit points. Now, normally this comment, I don't know, it might come on the show, it might not come on the show, but what brings it on the show is I have no idea what Claire means by library hit points.
Library hit points.
So I'm hoping you, in your infinite wisdom, can explain that to me.
I do not know the reference at all.
Oh, dear.
Though, I have no idea.
Claire, we need you to write in again, Claire.
Yeah, we need another comment.
Claire,
please explain.
We're a little stuck now, Claire. Which is unfortunate because this is the only feedback on the show. I don't know what to do. Yeah, Claire.
Well,
go ahead. I mean, I'm just assuming that somewhere along the line, somebody in Paizo's ginormous operation over there gave a library some hit points.
Well, I'm almost certain that okay, so Pathfinder was based on D&D 3.5 or 3.0,
right?
3rd edition D&D.
Right.
And one of the concepts behind D&D was stats for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was where we started seeing like resolving breaking an object by giving an object things like hardness and hit points and stuff like that.
Right.
And then you could build like siege warfare rules and stuff around that.
Mm-hmm.
And Pathfinder continued that to some extent. So I am sure at some point, objects, even or abstract collections of objects or buildings or what have you, probably have hit points in some in some source book,
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
actually, wait a minute, is this Ultimate Campaign?
Mm-hmm. I have no idea. What is Ultimate Campaign?
Ultimate Campaign was a book of new campaign options that in retrospect should have been a giant warning that Pathfinder 2.0 was coming.
Oh.
Because it's the sort of hodgepodge of rules.
Uh-huh.
Actually, no, because that was 2013. It was, oh no, wait. No, that's crazy.
Do your math.
I'm not really up on my Pathfinder anymore. I've kind of lost track of it. I feel bad about that because I did very much enjoy Pathfinder. Yeah, it did come out in 2013. That's a little long ago for it to be. Well, no, I mean, was 2 years in development. So what did they do? Among other things, they had rules for kingdom and organization and settlement building and stuff. So let's see. If I looked up library in here, library, economy +1, loyalty +1, upgrade to academy. It's got 6 BP and costs 1 lot. So basically, there's a SimCity system in there now. Which actually does seem kind of fun. I should read this. I'm actually a sucker for this kind of thing. As much as I make fun of people, the simulate everything people, I really am a sucker for these systems. Yeah, but there's like I assume it's a reference to some set of rules like that, but a lavatory. Benefit to having a lavatory. I would think that would be obvious.
You have to dig fewer holes?
Upgrade from shack.
Jeez. Okay.
Benefit bonus on fortitude saves against contracting disease. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all right, that's reasonable.
It takes 3 goods, 3 labor, and 4 days of time to build a lavatory.
And
see, like, base building stuff like this could really be fun.
Right.
If it was implemented well. And looking at this certainly appeals to a certain type of player. And again, admittedly, I'm one of the people who this appeals to.
So
but
why aren't you playing more Pathfinder?
Oh, this is just too much. I don't even know where to start.
You've lost your way.
I have. I stopped following. You can't stop following it for any length of time. It's like comics. If you give up following comics for any length of time, you will have no idea. Like, it'll just be, oh yeah, at one point Spider-Man, he lost his powers and then he gave birth to himself and became his own mother because of Spider-Queen, and now he has web shooters that are naturally a part of his arms instead of mechanical devices. This actually happened, by the way.
Right.
Spider-Man did die and then give birth to himself from the corpse. In order to explain in the comic book, because the Sam Raimi movies made Spider-Man's web slingers actually, a biological, he had spinnerets.
Right.
Right? But, Spider-Man had always built the web spinners himself. They were a mechanical device. So, in order to bring the comic books in line with the Sam Raimi movies, they had a long plot thread, which ended with Spider-Man was impregnated by a villainous Spider Queen of some kind. And he gradually started to lose his powers. And then in the end, he dies. And from his corpse bursts forth Spider-Man, exactly the same, but now he's got natural biological spinnerets in his arms.
Right.
And that's what happens when you stop following Pathfinder for a few years.
I can't imagine why I stopped reading comics. Oh, dear. Okay, fair enough. So we think we're talking about a library with actual hit points, is what we think.
Yeah, I would assume that's exactly what it was. It's part of the stats for everything.
Claire, if we're not on the right track here, please. Well, even if we are, let us off the hook, would you please?
Yeah, please just let us know.
Just one way or the other. Just let us know what's going on. We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Otherwise, I'm just going to tell more half-remembered comic stories that I never read.
That's excellent. Man, so complicated.
Right?
Next, you'll tell me Thor's hammer isn't Mjolnir anymore.
What? It's not?
I don't know. I just assumed that was the next weird thing. Like it's an alien symbiote, the hammer kind of thing that is slowly taking over Midgard.
No, isn't that Spider-Man also?
No, I don't know. Yes.
The alien symbiote? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that was Venom, but I mean, there could be more than one alien symbiote.
Wait, wasn't Venom different from Black Suit Spider-Man?
No, Venom was Black Suit Spider-Man.
Really?
Yes. Now ask me about Carnage.
What's Carnage?
Carnage is some leftover thingamagobber from Venom. who
Did you just say thingamagobber?
Yes. Who
okay.
that hooked up with some criminal type to become a murderous, psychotic, killing thingy dealy thing stuff. No, Black Suit Spider-Man, turns out the black suit was the alien symbiote.
Right.
And then when it, much like Spider-Man, whatever number that was, 3? Spider-Man 3? Is that the one with the black suit emo Spidey? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
The
less said about that, the better.
Okay. I'm not going to derail. The Yeah, much like that movie, the Spider-Man, Peter Parker eventually climbs up a bell tower, decides that ringing the bell really loudly will drive the symbiote off of him, and the symbiote goes to Eddie Brock, I think it is.
That's who it was in the movie.
Yeah, who has
I can't confirm
who has been jealous of Peter Parker all these years and blah 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 blah, and things happen, and the symbiote and Brock meld, and then there's a thing where eventually the symbiote is torn off of Brock, but somehow part of it becomes Carnage that goes around being even more evil than Venom. Meanwhile, I stopped caring and only have this by second or third hand, and so there you go. I don't understand. And no, do not write in and explain that.
Yeah, please don't explain it.
Just don't. Just take it. Please, just go.
Please don't.
Just go. Yep, that's close enough, and let it ride.
I mean, I'm sure I'm going to be told the details that I got wrong on the Spider-Man story there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
and guess what? I don't care.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, if you can have one alien symbiote, then you can have another, and why not Thor's hammer? It might as well be. And now somebody will write in and tell me that yes, that actually has happened, and that is what they did. Okay, here's the thing. We're going to have a shorter show this week. That's fine. That suits both of us well because so many things going on, right? But we made a decision last week after show about
what?
You and me, after the show last week, we made a decision about something we wanted to try.
Oh.
Are you with me now?
No.
Okay, good. This is going to be a great discussion. Look, here's the thing. Okay, we're going to wrap up the show with this, but
wait, was it the thing about the
thing with the eyeballs and the pieces of paper with the writing on them? Yes.
No. Okay, now I'm confused.
Look, book club. Okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay, I do remember.
All right. We're going to try a thing. And because we were so poorly organized this week, we're not going to fire it off this week that this airs. We're going to fire it off next week when the next show airs, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. We wanted to...
we hadn't actually decided how to handle this, honestly.
What?
Right?
What do you mean how to... No, we decided.
What did we? Okay.
We did.
Oh, right. I remember.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
For the people who weren't there, why don't you explain it to them and I will nod along.
Okay, that's fine. So what's going to happen is we want to do a Digressions and Dragons reading club sort of thing, where we all read the same book and then we all comment on said book and talk about it and
all
and
two of us.
It's all two of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no, the thing is, the listeners can join in on this
by reading the book.
And then coming in and commenting on the book when we wrap it up. What we're going to do? Okay, structure. Let's talk structure. We will announce next week. We will announce a title. Okay, and in the show notes for that episode will be a link to purchase that title if you don't already have it. Okay, then Scott and I will take a month basically. Because he's got a schedule, I've got a schedule. You guys probably have a schedule as well. We will take a month to read that title.
I'm also an embarrassingly slow reader.
Well, that's okay. We can get you help. Remember, reading is fundamental. So we'll take a month, and then we'll come back at the end of that month, and we will share our thoughts on the book and whatnot. At which point, we will then announce another title. And you can, this just keeps going like that. Once a month, there's a book announced, and once a month, there's a book, talked about. So it won't be every episode. It'll just be once a month as part of the show. And it's something you at home can participate in if you choose to. If you don't, that's fine as well.
And if it turns out to not be interesting at all, then it won't be once a month. It'll be that one time thing that we did that failed.
Right. So if you would like to provide some input on this idea, please do so in this show's comment section. But it's not going to matter because we're still going to announce it next month or next week, whether you want it or not, because the way things are timed. But do let us know, and it'll tell us if we should keep that up. That's our brilliant idea. No, we don't know what the first title is yet. We will have made some sort of a pretend decision by then.
Right. We have not even come up with the criteria on which we were discussing a couple of different ideas.
We were. There's some
how
interesting.
To choose the book.
Right. And also we had the proviso that it might also be a movie every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Because movies are shorter.
Yeah. But I don't know what criteria should we have?
That's actually a really good question because I think obviously we want something that is adjacent to our interests.
Right.
Probably something that is fiction rather than nonfiction.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to scratch that entire list I put in there last week.
Did you put in an entire list?
There are 4 items on it. If you look,
did we start a list?
Yes, I told you we were going to start. Why don't you ever listen to me?
Because I don't know. Because I'm a bad friend. Okay, just say it.
Okay,
I'm a bad friend. Fine. And I'm a bad podcast partner. I admit it. I'm terrible. Oh yeah, look, there's even a folder book suggestions.
Yes,
in our
there
Dropbox.
is. There is one, in fact. Now, I have read none of these.
Oh wait, that 4th one is one that I've been sitting on meaning to read.
Well, there you go. Maybe that'll be our first one.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So, well, okay, but here was my thought.
Yes, explain to me your thinking process.
I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we chose a book of the sort that we would never ever read?
Oh, you mean I have to read things that aren't any fun for me?
Well, there's a lot of role-playing game fiction out there.
Oh.
By various authors.
No, don't make me do that. Don't make me do that.
I have never managed to get through any of it.
Oh, don't make me do that.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus. No, see, this is probably why I should do it.
See, this is the thing. There are certain books that we have made fun of repeatedly through the years.
Right.
I know I have.
Anything with a Dritz on it.
Well, that's the question. Is it really as bad? In some sort of perverse way, I'm curious.
Schadenfreude, huh?
What was the first one? The Homecoming? That was the first Drizzt book, right?
Was it? I don't know.
I think Homecoming.
I don't know.
I damn it. It's the Waltons episode. That's what came up in. Or the Crystal Shard?
R.A. Salvatore. Crystal Shard. Yeah, probably. Oh man. Okay.
Did you ever do Dragons of the Autumn Twilight? Did you ever read any of the Dragonlance stuff?
The words, they burn us.
Speaking of books I was never able to get through.
Jeez.
Yeah, I never got through the whole Fellowship of the Lord of the Rings series.
Please, you've disappointed me enough for one day.
Oh, those books are terrible.
Stop yourself.
The characters have no emotions, and they're so drawn out.
You're killing me slowly.
I'm sorry.
You're not who I thought you were.
Why, did you think I was someone who didn't hate everything? Because it's not like I don't telegraph that. I hate everything.
All right, I will agree to your stipulation that we should read books we would never, ever, ever be caught dead reading.
Well,
on the grounds.
That was just a thought.
With the proviso that we must alternate with books that are well outside the fantasy genre, and include nonfiction in that.
Okay. Well, it's like, honestly, though, we don't have to set criteria for every book.
No.
Right now.
No.
I think it would be interesting at some point to do one of those D&D books that we have decided is terrible and find out if it is really terrible or if we're actually pleasantly surprised or both.
Can I be pleasantly surprised by how terrible it is?
Would that be a pleasant surprise if you have to read it?
Well, it would confirm my suspicions.
Yeah, okay. Well, then you take some joy in being right, I guess.
Right. All right. Well, I think we should maybe our first selection will reveal more. See what we should do, sir. What we should do is first take some suggestions. Okay. I've pre-populated a little list. That's fine. No problem. But take suggestions once this opens up. And
instead of announcing a title in a week, what if we let people have some... Well, I guess they'll have suggestions for us over the next week. Right?
Yeah. They'll put some out there. But
do you have some ideas? What would you love for us to read and then talk about a month from now?
Well, okay. So let me finish my first thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Which is that what we should do is, take some suggestions from people, but also we should be able, I think, to pick from a wide variety of books and then explain what our criteria was for picking that book.
Oh, okay.
Rather than just saying, "Oh, we have to read books we hate." We should then explain the criteria. So like if you want to read Dritz, then what you might say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you might say is, "Well, we always talk about how bad Dritz did and all this stuff, and I'm curious if he's really that bad, so I'm going to read blah blah blah."
Right.
That kind of thing. I think that might have more value than just, here's a bunch of crap we really hate reading, and our listeners might also hate reading. So that'll be a fun thing.
Well, the thing is that I do not want to end up only reading books that I don't like for the next the
next
6
forever.
months.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, you're right. That would be a bad thing. But we can, until listeners can get caught up and whatnot, we can decide what we've got that we are interested in reading, and then maybe we build a list of listener. And listeners should be telling us things like, "Oh, you should read, Jimmy Blibble and the Flying Squirrel," or whatever, and then explain in detail why you think it's something we might want to read. Not just, "My favorite book is The Lord of the Rings. You should read The Lord of the Rings so I can read The Lord of the Rings again."
You really do struggle with coming up for examples, don't you?
No.
Jimmy Flibble and the Flying Squirrel?
Yes. You'd read it.
I might.
Yeah, so I think that's where we should go with it. You can vote against me if you want, but it's going to be a split ballot.
No, I actually like that idea.
Okay.
Let people throw ideas out and tell us why it's a compelling idea.
Yes.
And because at worst, if we get a list of compelling ideas that we do not find compelling, we went with our own choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we definitely shouldn't exclude nonfiction books from that, because there are certain things that I really want some pointers on what I should be reading in a given area,
So you are basically using this to get our listeners to suggest books for you to read to fill your time?
No, I'm using this because
you're
this
just
is
dragging me down with you.
No, I'm not. I am doing this because I think it's a fun idea, and I think it allows us to interact with our listeners a little more closely and learn something about them while they learn something about us.
Oh, that sounds like a bunch of hippie bullshit.
Yeah, whatever. You struggle with coming up with appropriate swears.
It's because I'm not allowed to use the ones I know.
Uh-huh, yeah. I've seen the ones they're not pronounceable. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. If you hate that idea, well, then by all means tell us you hate it, but be aware that we'll probably be, half a month into it already. Anyway, we'll announce next show because I'm sure Scott will put some serious thought into this in the meantime.
Despite all past evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, exactly.
This will suddenly be the time I decide to engage with something.
Yep. Yeah, so mull that over, give us some suggestions. We'll see where we go with it. Maybe it's a thing, maybe it's not a thing. I don't know. We can but try. And
But try?
Yeah, but try.
Okay.
Stop. Because Scott has had the week he has had so far.
Which I did not even begin to get into.
Yes, and because I have many little things going on at the moment, we're going to be out of time.